welcome. Today I have a piece for my homemade art journal. It is 5 by 5 on Bristol Smooth, and I'm starting with a couple of stencils and a couple of distress inks. The first one is spiced marmalade, and I'm just using the stencil and kind of going from upper left to lower right. I don't want to cover the whole thing. I just want to be able to see portions of it. And since my stencil is small, I have to move it and place it down again, which is no big deal. I don't worry about making sure I don't move into other areas of the stencil so that I don't get a complete image all the time. I don't worry about that. So then I'm taking another stencil and I'm using picked raspberry, and I'm just kind of adding a little bit of floral on top of the it's kind of, to me, like an Art Deco floral, the first one. But then this is just a regular floral. And again, I'm just moving it around so that I get that big flower in different areas. And I want it to go farther above and below the original, the orange stencil. And I am good with that, I believe. And so then I'm just going to add some splatters in the same colors that go beyond the stencil prints, just to kind of fill in some of that area. And then I give it a dry. I'm kind of looking to see, I've got some book papers torn apart, so I'm kind of looking to see how I want to lay it. And at first I was going to cover a bigger area, and I really liked the stencil, how the stencil looked, that I decided to kind of pare down my paper covering. I may end up covering up a lot of it with all the extra ephemera and stuff, but I think it would have been even more had I used the paper as I originally had planned. So here I think is where I'm thinking, I just don't want to cover all that up. So I'm grabbing a ruler. This is a, I'm not sure if this is Tim Holtz. I can't remember. I think it might be. But basically, you kind of lay it down on your paper and then just pull it. And it's kind of got a, I wouldn't say it's a sharp edge, but it will cut and trim the paper to the shape of the ruler. And you can tell it's got two different edges. So I start thinking a little differently to hold on to more of the stencil so you can see more of it. And I just start taking some of these headlines that are kind of on the old paper and just gonna pare it down a bit. This caramels or caramels, depending on where you're from, is from a cookbook, which I end up not actually using it anyways. So before I start gluing down, I'm going to do a little bit of stamping. That stamp there is one of my favorite little text stamps when I want to do just small areas. And it's from, I believe it's the Obscure. It's like got body parts on it. So you think it's for Halloween, but I use this all the time for lots of different things. And I just like the smallness of the stamp. I'm using a stamp pad. I think it's Wendy Vici. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I'm not familiar with her. But I got it as a part of a mystery box from Ranger Ink. You pay so much money and you get, I think it's $29.99, and you get over $80 worth of product. You don't know what you're going to get, and this was one of the things that I got. So I was just trying it out. It worked very nicely. I didn't have an orange in my archival, so it worked out well. Then I use a stamp from Eccentric with Pebble Beach, which you end up not even seeing on the end product, which happens sometimes. And so now I'm going to start gluing on my book pieces. And silly me, I started putting my glue on and realized, oh, I have not distressed the edges of this, which I wanted to do. So I try to do it very carefully to not get any of the glue on my blending tool. It does go all over my fingers, however. And I put a couple creases in it and put the distress ink down the creases. And I'm using Vintage Photo, the color. And that's just from an old songbook. And then I again put ink on, or put glue on before I put the ink on. And I'm just kind of laying it so I'll be able to see the headings while not covering up any more of the stencil. This time I remembered to put the ink on prior to the glue. And I'm going to pick out a few pieces of Tim Holtz ephemera. I'm using field notes, number strips, and a couple pieces I think from snippets. I think that's about it. But I do put some vintage photo on those edges as well before I glue them down. Before I even get that far, I wanted to add a little bit of some of the homemade tape. Just to add a little more visual interest. I don't care if it's cut perfectly straight. Prefer it not to be actually. And now I start distressing the edges of my ephemera. And I lay it down pretty much where it's going to end up. And I'm saying that because I got interrupted. I had a phone call I had to take. And so when I came back, I didn't turn my camera on. And I glued all my ephemera down and didn't get it on camera. And also I had a digital printout that I bought from Etsy of some birds, and I fussy cut one of those out and have glued that down too. So once I break away from, well, you might not even see the breakaway, but you'll see that all of a sudden there is a bird in the picture. But one of the pieces that does move is this piece from the number strips. I put it higher up and it ends up down lower. I also stamp in that circle one, but you're not going to be able to see it anyways because in the final piece it's kind of all covered up. I'm looking for a couple more pieces, but actually I don't use it, and I think what's down there is what I end up with. And there it is. So that's all the pieces glued down. The bird is glued down. I think the bird looks great with the distressings that are in the background. And I'm adding some vintage photo. I just felt like there was too much starkness in the white compared to the rest of the piece. And so I just kind of add vintage photo over the white area. I'm not looking for a smooth blend. I'm just looking for it to look like it's aged over time and what that might look like. Some spots would get it more than others. So I'm not being real particular about how I get it down. And because I added vintage photo, normally I would do the edges with vintage photo, but because I wanted a little bit of darker edge, I grabbed my scorched timber and just add that around the edges. I'm having problems with that sticking to my Velcro, and it's just that one. I don't know why it does it, but it keeps flopping off. So I just kind of hold it on with my finger, and I'll figure out later what's going on with that, because the back of the pad is fine, so I'm not sure. And the last thing I do is add some ephemera, or not ephemera, sentiment. And this size is one of the few sizes I can use one of my longer quotes that I do in my Cricut. So I grab a longer one, break it in half, cut it in half, and it says, "Not everything that counts can be counted." And that's the last of it. I hope you enjoyed watching this come to fruition. If you have not subscribed, please do. If you liked what you saw, give me a thumbs up. And you have a great day.